Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Perspectives. It is Monday, January 17th, 2022. Wherever you are this morning joining us for the broadcast across the various entities, we welcome you. I am Brenda Batiste, your moderator, and we are in the third week of January, are we? Yes, we are. Yeah, really quick time. Can't believe it. But anyway, here we are. Trust everyone had a good weekend, up and about and ready to face the week ahead. If you're not feeling so good today, we trust as the day goes by, you'll get to feel better. And it is now a pleasure for me to introduce our expert talk panel, our Senator Christopher Deali, who is here with me in studio, and zooming in from the beautiful village of Montmaris this morning, Mr. Byron Campbell. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning, Brenda, and good morning to our viewers and listeners. And a pleasure to be here again this morning. You know, Brenda, I heard that the temperature last night dropped to 21 degrees.
I felt it.
21, so that was pretty cold.
I felt it. I felt it. Yeah. Yeah, I felt it. I did.
You did?
Mm-hmm. I needed to draw for thicker covers, if you know what I mean.
Good morning, my brothers. Byron.
Morning all.
Morning.
Pleasant day.
How's the
It's
temperature
like sunshine already in the village and this morning. 21. I've been blanketed since December actually, so I didn't feel the difference last night. But it's a beautiful day. I just want to wish everyone a pleasant week. Happy week.
All right. Well, we're missing you in person. You know, we always like to have you right across there staring down at us. But nonetheless, we feel you. So, yeah. How's Montmaris this morning?
It's beautiful. Not much traffic, as you know. The Western Main Road we are now on the path part of the Western Main Road. But light traffic this morning, not very heavy, and normal morning. Good rainfall for the villagers, for the farmers. We get in sporadic rainfall. My information is that we'll have, and Trevor could verify that, we'll have a mixed, a wet dry season. So I think we all look forward to this.
A good thing for the farmers for peace, Byron. Rain and sun.
Yeah, and the peace season has been prolonged actually. There is still quite a good supply in the market and elsewhere. So that's good, that's positive.
Right. So, gentlemen, we get right into it this morning as we have a busy morning of guest panelists here with us, joining us here on Perspectives. And as February 1st fast approaches, Republic Bank, yes, getting ready to finalize their conversion. And with us this morning from Republic Bank is Ms. Ali Carmichael. She is the Assistant Manager for Commercial Credit, and Mr. Stephen Andrews, he's a branch manager of the Grenada Steels Complex. Good morning.
Good morning, Brenda. Good morning to Senator Deali, Mr. Campbell, members of the panel. Just a bit correction. I am Mr. Stephen Andrews and is Mr. Ali Carmichael.
Sorry. I don't know why I switched your names up. Mr. and Mrs. staring at me in the face. I don't know why.
Good morning, Brenda.
Good morning, everyone.
All right. So, morning to both of you. So, thank you so much for joining us here to discuss your conversion from Scotiabank to the Republic banking platform. And for the sake of the audience, please remind us about what the conversion is all about, Ali.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Good morning to your listeners. The conversion basically entails the acquisition of the Scotiabank branches. As you all know, Republic Bank in 2019, November, thereabout, would have acquired operations in some of the EC territories, including Grenada, right? But after that purchase, we continued to use the current Republic Bank systems, all the applications and so on. So what we're doing this year, well, at the end of this month, is converting those systems, those procedures and so on from the current Scotiabank systems onto the new Republic Bank system, right? The conversion will take two approaches. The first approach is the two former Scotiabank branches. That's the one on Halifax Street and the one at Grandans at the Steel Complex. And later on, during the course of 2022, the Republic Bank 6 original branches will be joining that conversion. And that will be the phase 2.
So, Mr. Carmichael, good morning again to you and Ms. Andrews. The question for me is that you all started the conversion a little while now, late last year, I believe it's August or thereabout, September or later. How has been the uptake right now with the conversion, people coming in to get their debit cards, understanding the process and what is going on? How has been the uptake with your customer base from the Scotia side that you're now bringing over onto the Republic platform?
Okay. But what we noticed is that we was first scheduled to convert November 1, right? But based on the traction and so on that we saw in the uptake in some of those cards and so on, and then some of the taping processes we noticed in the first 2 countries that went live, we thought it was prudent to push back the conversion date to February 1st, just to make sure that 1, we iron out all the kinks, 2, that we engage as much of our customer base as possible to collect their debit cards, to collect their credit cards and so on, so that when we convert, it would be as seamless as possible. Right. And we're in the month of January, December, we're seeing the traction, but I mean, we're here now to kind of make a plea to our customer base just to make sure that they have all the resources they would have after conversion, so they can live the financial life like how they had it before.
So I was trying to get an understanding of, in a percentage, from a percentage standpoint, you're 50% in terms of customers uptake, or less than that, or more than that? What kind of percentage uptake you have so far?
The last report in terms of the debit card collections that we had was about 4,000 thereabout out of the 9,000 cards that we have for distribution. So that's one of the last updates I have. I think it was the last week or 2.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if Stepha would have more updated information on that part.
That's correct, actually, Ali. We still have a lot of customers that have to collect their debit cards, credit cards, their checkbooks. And that's why we're putting it out there for customers, don't wait until last minute. Now is the time for you to come in, right? There isn't a crowd right now, so you can go right ahead from Halifax Street branch and the Grandans branch, upstairs Steeles Commercial Complex, to come to collect those cards.
Yeah, Ms. Andrews, I just want to pursue that a little deeper, because the reason I'm on that line is because I know Grenadians are last-minute kind of people, and I know your institution probably is doing all you can to get people to come in early and get the cards and the checkbooks, the debit cards, and so on. The issue here is that, is the bank prepared for a rush in the end when you are about to convert in February, that you'll probably see long lines? Are you guys prepared to deal with that? Because I know people will wait until the last minute to come in.
Well, what we've been doing is, the first approach that we had was last year. We had opened up an offsite scheduling, offsite location in Radisson's to assist with the distribution of the cards, because with the COVID situation in Grenada, you wouldn't want to have everybody flocking through the banking halls along with normal customers doing normal transactions. And the other part that we did is renovated the upstairs of Steel Complex to make it a centralized location to distribute cards, debit cards, credit cards, and so on, so that we won't have those customers collecting, mingling, or extending the lines with other customers trying to do transaction in the branches. So we're thinking that with the offsite location, we should be able to handle some of the volume that will be coming through. And also, too, what we've been doing too is having a batch approach in terms of sending out emails to a batch of customers, calling a batch of customers, so at least we won't have a flood in terms of everybody waking up on the 28th or the 29th to come and collect the cards. But still, we have a plan in place in terms of dealing with any type of long anticipated line. The collection process is not long, so we don't anticipate it will be an in and out kind of operation if we have a build up in traffic.
Because you know what will happen, Mr. Carmichael, when they start coming in and they will say you're ready to convert cards, not working the old cards and so on, you're going to get a lot of people crawling and saying, well, why the bank didn't say this and say that and so on. So I just saying, I know you guys are going to be
If I
stress
may
with that.
add though, we are engaging with the frontline staff and back office staff. So every customer that comes to do a transaction, right? The officers, the staff is supposed to ask the customers, have you already collected your new debit card, your credit card, your checkbooks, and asking the customers to spread the news to their family members, their friends. So we are engaging staff. That is a conversation that they have to have on a daily basis. But as Ali will have mentioned, we are also prepared, right, for the long lines to assist the customers in collecting their cards and the other checkbooks and so on.
All right.
And
Just before we move off that, are you making any special contingencies like probably weekend collection or so that people should be aware of? Because that's the only time probably some people may have.
Yes, actually, we started Saturday, right? Customers had an opportunity to visit the Steels Commercial Complex to collect their credit cards, checkbooks, debit cards. And we also have another one scheduled for next Saturday,
Okay.
right? That is going to be the 22nd, well, this Saturday coming actually, which is the 22nd, for customers to get an opportunity to collect the debit cards, credit cards, and their checkbooks.
Okay.
So we do have that in place, yes.
Wonderful. Mr. Campbell?
Yes, good morning, good morning. Well, I'm talking here in the first person because I happen to be a member of the Halifax branch, and I was in the branch recently, and someone told me, I didn't go there for a change of card, but it happened while I was there, and I took the opportunity. There was an officer towards one side of the teller section, and I was able to very easily, within I would say 5 minutes, to have a new card issued to me that I was told I could only use this. I should start using it from the 1st of February. Excellent for me. No problem at all. It was quite easy. But give us a little more information about the timing in terms of where and when, those kind of details. And also the fact that you have customers in the diaspora. What is the arrangements to accommodate them in terms of obtaining their credit cards and change of account numbers, etc.? Thank you.
for customers in our diaspora, we've been engaging a lot of those customers and so on. We're seeing all that proactiveness from those customers. They would call their account officer to advise that, hey, I'm overseas, I won't be able to come back for the card, what type of arrangement that we have. So what the bank has been doing since last year was we're going to DHL or FedEx the cards to those persons in the diaspora. The cost will be covered by the bank, right? So we're asking everyone in the diaspora who has the old Republic Scotiabank debit card, the red one, or even the blue Republic credit debit card, that doesn't have the contactless feature. So one of the features that we'll be having with the new cards is contactless in terms of doing transactions and so on. It's a Wi-Fi style tilt to the side, right? So if you don't hold that type of card currently, the one that you have need to be changed. If you're in the diaspora, just contact your account officer, or you can send us an email at conversion@rfhl.com. That's conversion@rfhl.com, and we would make the arrangements to FedEx or DHL the cards to you.
Just to add to Ali, the customers can also visit our social media pages, right? Our websites, to get updates on information. And of course, if you have not received your new bank account number via postal mail, right, email, or from the branch, then we're asking you to contact us on 473-459-2526 or 459-2313. And I'll repeat the number again, 459-2526 and 459-2317. Right? It's also important that customers update their employers and other stakeholders, example, NIS pensioners, with a new account number, so that you can continue to receive your funds, right, to your account after the conversion. because we want to avoid having customers unable to receive their end of month salary or their monthly pension because they did not complete the process before the end of January.
Right.
Of course, you dealing with your commercial bank and obviously you operate a checking account systems. What happens to customers, both commercial and private, with existing checkbooks? How is that arrangement, that aspect of the conversion going to happen? Would you need to issue to me new checkbooks? What is that arrangement? If you could elaborate, please.
Well, you can continue to use your current stock of checks until January the 31st, 2022, right? But from February the 1st, 2022, you should discontinue use and destroy your old stock of checks, right? Because those checks will no longer be available to be used, right? So to avoid any interruption, that's why we're encouraging all customers who have checking accounts, right? If you have not received your checkbooks as yet, please go to the Halifax Street branch, upstairs Steve's Commercial Complex, right, Grandad's branch, to collect your checkbooks.
Also to add, checkbooks that is issued on or before January 30th will be honored by the bank 6 months after the issue date, based on the ECCB guidelines. So for persons who is writing checks this month, we will accept and negotiate those checks 6 months post the date on those checks.
Right. In terms of your credit card modalities, what's going to happen? Are there going to be new debit cards, new credit cards, new numbers? What's going to happen?
Because we're changing the core banking platform, all the cards and so on that is currently in circulation will no longer be functional after the conversion date, which is February 1. So that's the reason why since last year we've been pushing customers to collect the cards, because what would happen is that up until the end of the month, you'll be able to use your current cards, and then post February, you would discontinue the old card and use the new cards, right? Some things to note, cards that is attached to subscriptions like Amazon, Netflix. I know some persons may have standing orders to pay like schooling or anything that is associated to the old card. You would then need to go and revisit those sites and upload or we re-establish that payment using the new card feature. So that's one of the areas that we're noticing higher risk in terms of customer complaints, because if you don't have your new debit card by the end of the month, then you may find that those subscriptions and so on will no longer work. So that's the reason why we're kind of pushing to get the customers to come and collect those cards.
All right. So, well, somebody might say, I did not request a new card. So why are you asking me to collect a new one?
No, we understand that request, but we need to also understand that because Republic Bank would have acquired the branches of Scotiabank, right? We was given approximately 2 years to complete that conversion from their systems and their connectivities to our system, and it's just a matter of doing the conversion, going through the 1 or 2 week of teething process to get everything back up, and it would be a seamless operation, just as how it is now under the former system.
Okay.
Just to add to Ali, for the viewers and listeners, from the 25th of January, that's next week, the new credit card will be available to be used, because after the 28th, right, our ATM services will go down. So from the 29th, the customers will not have an opportunity to use the ATMs. So for those customers who have their salaries and you're expecting funds, we're asking you to withdraw the funds before time, right, to avoid any interruption. In addition, if you do have your credit card and that's another feature, right, another card that you can use to withdraw funds from. And of course, it's going to be effective from the 25th. You will be able to start using it from the 25th.
Right.
Now, some points to note with regards to the credit card, right? It comes with a unique personal identification number, right, which is provided with your new card package. And this personal identification number must be used for credit card transactions at point of sale terminals and ATMs, right? And we're also reminding customers, do not use your old personal identification number with your new card. Your unique PIN is on the inside of the PIN mailer received in the package. So of course, if you haven't received that PIN mailer, then you need to come back to the branch because you will not be able to use that card. Once you open the PIN mailer, you will see your 4-digit unique PIN, right? We're asking you to memorize the personal identification number, right? You can save it somewhere safe, but do not divulge it to anyone.
All right.
So, Ms. Andrews, to follow up on that aspect of people who are on the ATM use and going down, I mean, have you been in contact with employers to sensitize employers on this situation? So for the month of January, are you asking employers to facilitate that? Because if employees have to go to the ATMs and withdraw cash early, is it that employers will be expected to probably put through their payments earlier for staff members who probably use the electronic platform, the EFT platform, to pay salaries and so on?
Yes, most certainly.
Stefan, I'll take that question because it falls directly under my jurisdiction. So as the manager for the business accounts here, we've been contacting customers since October last year to advise them of all the different changes and so on to anticipate on their business accounts, right? One of the other things that we did in the beginning of January was to circulate letters to all the grade 1 employers in Grenada. Grade 1 meaning all the larger companies and so on that transact on the island, to advise them of the changes in account numbers and so on, asking them to ask their staff to reach out to the branches to get their account numbers. And within the last 2 weeks, one of my roles was to actually make a circulation to all the larger customers within our group. And I'm saying large not as the bigger customers, but large in terms of employers, because employees that they have with their institution. So it's not we're not only just focusing on the bigger companies on the island, but large employers, right? To advise them of the different changes and so on that they will have on their account, asking them to come in and collect their account numbers, and also asking them to, if they can pay salaries early. We already engaged the government of Grenada, companies like NIS, SGU, Digital Flow. A lot of the conversations that we have around the conversion, one of the top points is actually asking them if they can pay early. So what would happen is that employees would then have accounts or the funds in their account before the ATMs go down, and then ask them if they could let those employees know that they did pay early so they could come in and withdraw cash so they could sustain their spending over the conversion weekend when the ATMs will be down.
And just to be clear again, the ATMs go down on the 29th, Ms. Andrews?
Yes.
So the expectation is that the employers will put through funds earlier. I suppose January being a long month, a lot of employees will be happy for earlier deposit of funds for them to use.
Employees, yeah.
Employees, obviously.
Employees, yes.
Of course, some of us employers may have cash flow, may have some cash flow. But nonetheless, we understand what is being required here so that the transfer is seamless.
Yeah.
And what is the response from employers? And because just to be clear, this is for the Scotia people who are now coming over to Republic and not legacy customers on the Republic platform.
That's correct. Yes.
So the volume should not be, well, hopefully should not be as great in this phase concerning, so if in my establishment I had 10 people that were dealing with Scotia, these 10 people are expected to now give me their new account numbers so that funds could be transferred into their account, right?
Correctly. That's correct.
That's correct.
Right.
And to just to add, I mean, the conversations that goes back to the relationship that you have with your clients. All the conversations that I had with the different employers, with the different companies here in Grenada, they understand the ask, and we haven't got any no's. We gotten tentative dates like the 23rd, the 24th, the 25th, paid salaries, and they also made a commitment to let the staff know, because some staff members might think I normally get paid on the 29th. So sometimes the money will be sitting on their account and they may not know. Right. So one of the things that they said that they would also do is just let those staff know that, hey, we paid early. we spoke to the bank. They will have the ATMs done. So please go in the bank and get those funds that you need.
Well, Republic Bank, it sounds like through your conversion modality, you're kind of jump-starting some economic activity for the month of February. I'm sure that was not your plan when you started this. Thank you very much. Closing comments from both of you?
Well, one of the main things I would start with is just letting anyone who used to bank with the former Scotiabank branches, if you're currently holding a red debit card or even the blue Republic Bank card that doesn't have the contactless symbol on it, please reach out to the branches. The collection process is very easy, as Mr. Campbell mentioned. Just to make sure that you have that card upon conversion, so you can go about doing your transactions, right? Also, too, what I've been doing on the business side is our business customers that do internet banking in terms of paying salaries online and monitoring the transactions online. We've been engaging them to get trained on the new online banking platform for Republic Bank. We're having training sessions from October last year. We've been having training sessions every day at 9 p.m. to just show them how to log in, how to give their employees different rights, how to do transactions online like wire transfers and so on. So we've been engaging our customers since October, but right now we're just using your platform as another way in which we can engage those customers.
Right, and if I may add, February 1st is just around the corner, right?
Yes.
Do not wait until last minute. We may sound very repetitive, but we're urging customers to visit our conversion center again at Halifax Street branch, Steve's Commercial Complex, the Grandlands branch, right? That's opposite Food Fair before the end of January. It is very important to complete those transactions that you have not yet completed. And for those customers who have not collected their debit cards, their credit cards, their checkbooks, we're urging you to come in to avoid any interruption in your access of your accounts on February the 1st. And just again, to remind everyone, our listeners and our viewers, right, you can contact us via email on conversion@rfhl.com. Our telephone numbers 459-2526 or 459-2317. And for the listeners and the viewers that's here today, right, please spread a word. If you know of anyone who have not collected their debit cards, credit cards, checkbooks, right? Or you know anyone that bank with us, please spread the word.
And Ms. Andrews, just to remind, the checkbooks are free.
Yeah, I was just coming to mention that. I was just coming to mention that similarly to how we're going to pay the costs of couriering those debit cards and credit cards to customers in our diaspora, we're currently going to cover the cost of the checkbooks for the retail and business customers. We have some customers. We've been engaging our customers since last year to advise them don't stock up on new checkbooks because they would be invalid as soon as we convert. So we have a threshold in which we're going to cover for business and personal customers. And if there's any variances, we'll just have to do it in an exception.
All right. Well, thank you so very much to both of you, and all the best as you continue your conversion. Just to remind folks that you can, if you try to contact the bank this week through all the various platforms, and if you can't, on Saturday, coming the 22nd, the bank will be open again to facilitate that conversion. We've been speaking there with Ali Carmichael, the Assistant Manager of Commercial Credit, and Stephen Andrews, the Branch Manager of the Grandland Steels Complex. Thank you so much, Republic Bank. Have a great day.
Thank you, Brenda. Thank you, Brenda. Thank you, Senator Daddy. And Saturday's coming is going to be from 8:30 to 3 p.m., guys.
8:30 to 3 on Saturday.
Yes.
All right. Yes, it's important to say that.
At the Steels Complex, right? They have a Street branch.
Steels Commercial
Steels Complex. Okay, wonderful.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Have a great day and stay safe, yeah?
Thank you. Same to you.
You're most welcome.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right.
Bye.
So, yeah. It seems like they're finally ready for that final
Yeah, but you know, in all of these things, you know, it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
convert from old to a new platform or from the existing Scotia to the New Republic platform. They are doing a lot of great things. The cards are now more user-friendly. It's safer, contactless. You don't have to swipe a card and all of that. And it's a good thing. So customers really need to get their act in order because we go rush at the end and we go have a lot of problems.
On February 1st, they call in the radio station. I know what happened to Republic Bank. I can't use my card.
ATMs. And so it's good to try and get cooperation as early as possible. So we really have to help the customers,
Absolutely.
go that seamless as possible.
All right, great. So here we were talking conversion. Of course, the final Scotiabank customers converting over to blue.
That's right. Red to blue.
Yeah, from red to blue. Republic Bank.
That's not why I'm dressed in blue this morning.
That's why you dressed in blue this morning?
No, I'm not. I'm just saying.
I know Mrs. Daly sent you out in yeah, you have to represent. You know what I'm saying? You think the marriage is for fun or what? Everywhere,
Byron, you need to help me here.
Full
Come
step.
on, Byron.
Mr. Cappy, agree with me yet?
I'll meet you immediately after the meeting. No, but I think, as a customer of the bank, I did go through this. Was seamless for me. Very little time, just over 5 minutes.
Great.
I was quite happy with the process.
Great.
And it wasn't planned. I was in the bank and it was available.
Yeah, they're being very proactive. That's good. That's really good. And I noted Byron tie is blue as well. That's what I was just saying.
All right. Some blue energy. Yeah, that's good energy. Anyway, talking conversion, we're going into climate change. Where we take a quick break and we'll be right back.
Get vaxxed. It's your best shot. Hello.
A message from the Ministry of Health.
For persons with symptoms of COVID-19, testing is done within 5 days of the start of symptoms using a SARS-CoV-2 antigen test. If the result is positive, individuals are required to isolate for 14 days. Day 1 of isolation is the day of confirmation with a positive test. Retesting is not required for release from isolation. Once persons complete the required 14-day isolation, they can resume normal activities, observing routine public health protocols. If the result is negative, a PCR test will be done for confirmation. If the PCR test is positive, the individual is required to isolate for 14 days as above. If the PCR test is negative, the individual will be released from quarantine and can resume normal activities observing routine public health protocols.
Welcome back to Perspectives. We have a really jam-packed morning, if you will, here. And this morning we switching our conversation. I would say conversion, huh? We're converting the conversation from banking to climate change. And of course, recently, Grenada sent some representatives to the Conference of the Parties, commonly known as COP. And we had COP26, and Dr. Spencer Thomas and Mr. Trevor Thompson, they were Grenada's representatives there. We say good morning to these two fine Grenadian public servants, so to speak. Whether they are attached to the public service or not, that is great public and national service, what they're both doing. So we'd like to say good morning and thanks for waking up early to speak with us here on Perspectives. Good morning to you both.
Good morning. Good morning. And thank you for your invitation to be here.
You're welcome. Dr. Thomas, I hope we didn't wake you up too early.
No, I've already been on the beach and back.
I know that, you know. I know. I just wanted you to put that a little bit in.
It's directly related to climate change.
It is. And how's the beach looking this morning?
Oh, wonderful.
Right. We didn't do anything naughty over the weekend. We kept it clean?
Yes.
Good. Right. Once Dr. Thomas happy with what he's seeing is great. And Mr. Trevor Thompson, thank you so much, Trevor, for consenting to be here this morning. I know Mondays are busy days for senior public officers like yourself. So thank you very much for being here.
I want to thank you for the opportunity to be part of this, this panel, and it's really an honor to.
Right. So we're talking a lot about climate change. Folks are hearing that. I'm here. It's a kind of a buzzword in school and all of that, which is good. And we're seeing that across the world. We're hearing that we're trying to, the goal of keeping warming to 1.5, that's still alive, right? Or is it on life support? But before we get into all of that and the COP26 and so on, what you gentlemen represented us at recently, any one of you can take this, and I'm sure Dr. Thomas, you may want to, see that you've been in it for so long. What is climate change? And on the back of that, why do you get together in a conference of the parties to talk about climate change?
Thank you very much for this opening question. I think very important. As you mentioned, the conference of the parties, when we say COP26, which we related to the conference of the parties, I just want to back up a bit to just indicate that we are talking here not only about one meeting, we're talking about several meetings occurring simultaneously. Now, the conference of the parties has to do with the convention itself, the United Nations Climate Change Convention, which was one of the 3 Rio conventions in 1992. Of course, it was signed and ratified by over 190 something countries, 96 countries. Grenada is one of them. So and to date, we had our 26th meeting. So when we say conference of the parties, it's basically the 26th meeting of the conference of the parties. Okay. But within that same period, we do have 2 protocols that have been elaborated under the convention, the Kyoto Protocol, and we had our 16th meeting of the Kyoto Protocol occurring at the same time. And we also had our Paris Agreement, which was again signed in 2015 and ratified in 2016, and that the 3rd meeting of that body also happened. So the parties that we're talking about here are, once you sign and ratify any of those 3 conventions and protocols, you become a party. So conference of the parties relate to the people who have signed and ratified those conventions and protocol meeting in that space to deliberate on issues relating to climate change. So in a way, at the same time, we do have subsidiary bodies, which are some technical bodies meeting at the same time. The subsidiary body for implementation and the subsidiary body for technology also occurring at the same time. So it's a whole range of meetings happening all at the same time, which we commonly call COP26 as an umbrella. Of course, I mean, at the same time, during that meeting, we have Leaders Summit. And the beginning of in the COP26, I think there were over 140 heads of state and heads of government at that meeting, opening the COP to in a way send the signals as to exactly what the heads of government will like the outcome of the COP to be. So that is in a nutshell. Grenada had, as you said, a delegation of a minister plus 4 national delegations, and the national delegation, and we had it right. We had 2 ladies and 2 men on our technical delegation. We also had it right because we had 2 youths and 2 of the older fellas, Thompson and I, in the 2nd category, but we had 2 young ladies also with us, and that constituted our delegation. And I think our delegation worked very hard to ensure that the priorities that we set ourselves, as you mentioned, in terms of the priorities that we had as Alliance of Small Island States, the priorities that were elaborated on the CARICOM level, the priorities that were elaborated on the OECS level, and the priorities that were elaborated on the national level. There was some congruence in all those priorities, and we went to the COP with basically, in a nutshell, 4 major priorities, one of which you have already mentioned, to keep 1.5 alive, to ensure that we have serious mitigation action on the global level to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, to ensure that we do not have dangerous interference with the climate system. So that was the pillar of the issue on the keeping the 1.5 alive, right. Because we are clear that the science is very, very clear on 1.5. That if we breach that temperature threshold that we're going to get serious impact, escalation of impacts on our climate system.
Right. Keeping 1.5 alive. Oh, thank you very much for edifying us on the makeup, the demographic makeup of our delegation to COP26. Appreciate that. And the fact that if we are planning this for future, the representation was intergenerational and, of course, a fervent gender mix. So thank you for injecting that there. You're in my mind because I was coming with that. But you say you talk about the science and the 1.5 alive, and that is set globally. But really, in terms of everything that is happening as it relates to action, Dr. Thomas, is that on life support? Because really, what came out of COP26 that reinforces your belief that we are getting to the 1.5?
Well, my answer to the question, yes, it might be on life support, but it would have been dead if we hadn't had COP26, if we haven't been at the meeting on the table to make those negotiations. We need to look at two things, really. One is what is happening inside of the negotiation and what is happening outside of the negotiation. Inside of the negotiation, of course, there are a lot of issues, political issues, geopolitics, and so on, competitiveness issues, country by country analysis, and so on and so on, happening inside of the COP. And people are defending posts in there. But outside of the COP, a lot is happening. A lot is happening on the national level. A lot is happening on the local levels in terms of taking action against climate change. We see a very strong advocacy, especially from the youth and from civil society for decisive action on climate change. So implementation is happening on some levels. It may be there is a disconnect between what is happening inside of the negotiation and outside. And that the ambition that we have outside is not mirrored in the ambition that we have inside. As we stand right now, while we say it is on life support, it's because the commitment that we have so far is putting us on a trajectory to 2.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels, whereas the threshold is 1.5. So at the COP, the decision was made that in 2022, this year, we will have to revisit the ambition to ensure that the emission levels have trended towards 1.5 rather than on the current level of 2.5.
So, Doc, I just want to continue along those lines and to say, when you read the brief coming out of COP26 in terms of decision made and conclusions regarding the 1.5 threshold, a lot have been said about the issue of countries that are into heavy coal mining and what that is doing to temperature rise and the trajectory, as you indicated, heading to 2.5. And of course, the fact that a lot of us want to get it and keep it, policies and decisions politically and geopolitically to keep us at 1.5. But the question to you is this. To us in SIDs, small island developing states, we are going to be the beneficiaries of major climate change and temperature rises. So we will see things like sea level rises and all of those things, acidification of the oceans and what is going to happen with us with the blue economy, because we have touted the blue economy as one of the areas to exploit. How have, on the local level, our participation at COP26 assisted us in mitigating or dealing with some of these issues that I dare say we're seeing right now? So it's an urgent issue for us in these SIDs.
Well, I'm not quite sure if I heard you well. I heard beneficiaries of climate change. I think it's the other way around. I think we stand to bear the greater part of the burden of our climate change. And climate change is a phenomena which is caused by others, but we are bearing the bulk of it. True. My answer to the question have always been the same. If you're not on the table of the negotiation, you will be on the menu of the negotiation. So you'll get eaten alive if you're not there to defend your pole. So my concern here is that we have to be there. Small island developing states, through the EOSIS and through CARICOM and through Pacific Seeds and African Seeds, we come together and negotiate on that platform. We are being called the conscience of the convention, Small Island Developing States. We are the ones who ask for the most ambitious outcome. We are the ones who are most emotional, clearly those the ones that are standing to take the bulk of the problems. So that is the reason why we are in that zone. Now, I believe that over the years, by being on the table, by articulating for our positions, by being a part of the advocacy for change, I think that has moved the needle significantly. For instance, let me give you one example. The issue of loss and damage, which has been one of the key issues for small island developing states. That came about 20 years ago. And it took us 20 years for loss and damage to be mainstreamed in the climate negotiations. Now, if you have not been on the table, there was nothing in the COP decision would have spoken to loss and damage. There would have nothing been in the COP decision would have spoken to finance for adaptation, which we are now feeling as a consequence of not enough mitigation in climate change. So we got to be on the table. The question of the finance for mitigation and finance for adaptation, and the whole question of capacity building and technology transfer to developing countries to help cope with the climate problem would not be on the table at the negotiation today. Have the small island developing states not been organized properly to ensure that these things become part of the deliberation. So in a nutshell, we got to be there. You got to stick to your position. You have to use the science, use the science that is coming out from the IPCC and IPBES and other scientific bodies, and ensure that the stake of the small island developing state are on the table. The one point I need to make, though, is that underpinning all that we do in the negotiations, one of the things that we hold very firmly to is the unique vulnerability. The unique vulnerability and the special circumstances of small island developing states. This is underpinning all of the negotiations that we do. We are clear that we are not responsible, but we carry the bulk of the burden for climate change. And as such, we ensure that small island developing states are treated as with the concept of unique vulnerability and a special circumstance.
So Doc, just to follow up on you on that issue, and especially on the financing side, because I know that, if I was to use NAWASA as an example, and the Green Climate Fund and the monies we got, the grant monies they got under the Green Climate Fund, the issue now for SIDs, because it is so urgent for us, because we're seeing all the issues, as I mentioned, with sea level rises and other stuff, and how it's affecting our fishing industry, and I dare say our tourism product, because as we see these changes and so on, and what is happening with the sea levels and so on, it is definitely going to affect our tourism product. How, and the issue of the bureaucracy in getting financing to us quicker and immediately. I know one of the things coming out of COP was that more monies were pledged. Now the issue is, how quickly are we going to be able to access it? If it took NAWASA 3 to 4 years to get access to their monies, are we on the same trajectory, or are there something that the pledgers and those of us who have to access the funding in terms of the bureaucracy, is it that we are going to streamline that and monies could come to us to deal with mitigation and adaptation quicker and easier?
Well, I think that's the crux of the matter, really. I mean, making the pledges is one, making the commitment is one, but at the same time, implementing those is the key. And hence the reason why we have to be on the table, because we have to be on the table as members of the Green Climate Fund to determine how these monies are disbursed at speed of disbursement, the modalities of disbursement. We are to be part of that deliberations, because I think it is important that this message is being sent. You don't get anything like that unless you ask for it, unless you fight for it within this process. So you got to be on the table. And as we speak, many of the small island developing states representatives on the Green Climate Fund are working towards changing some of the disbursement modalities. It takes too long. And we have to be able to be in a position where we can have access to those funds. So it's not only having the commitment of the funds, but the funds must be in the form, in the manner, and in a timely manner, and also in the form which makes sense for us. For instance, if the funds are loans, it does not make sense for most of us. it got to be grant resources.
Right.
And
I just want to make a point. I want to make a point on that issue too, because what we fail to realize is that governing all of these agencies, bodies are representatives from the different regions and negotiating blocks. And because we are at the negotiation and at the table, we are able to demand, I would say, request that we have representation. So on the Green Climate Fund board, we have representation from small island developing states there, and that's where we can strategize and lobby and negotiate for changes to the modalities. I also want to say that at the COP, because we were represented at the COPs in the past and at this present one, we have had significant progress made with regards to the issue of agriculture, the impacts of climate change on agriculture and on water. Right. That's where we were able to get this funding for this water project, this climate resilience water project. So if you're not present, you don't have a voice, and you don't have representation. So it's extremely important that even though we cannot have as much persons represented as we would like to, that we still have a presence there, because that at the negotiations, every country party has one vote, and the decision is by consensus. So no country has more power in terms of its vote than any other country, and that's where you have the leveling off of this process.
So Trevor, I have one question for you before I hand you over to Byron, and that is Grenada's schedule for projects under climate change. And I mean, I saw a matrix with many of them, the Carenage, efforts in agriculture. Have that list been looked at recently? Have it been adjusted? And have we done prioritization on that list? So we may have 12 projects, but we want 3 or 4 as immediate and prioritized. Have that been updated to the point where we know, say, for example, in 2022, 2023, 2024, what are the exact projects we are going to be engaging in for tourism, agriculture, and I know we have something about climate smart cities and what is happening there. Is that list available and updated to the point where we know what is going to happen in Grenada in the next 2 to 3 years?
Yes, that is constantly being updated. That we call it the climate readiness package that we would send to the Green Climate Fund and have a list of funding agencies, example, the Adaptation Fund, etc., who we would seek the financial resources from. Of course, these projects have to be always tweaked to make sure that they fit the climate criteria that we submitting them under. So these normally would be what I would call a highly developed concepts that are, once we have the approval to go to the next step. So for example, we have a NAP readiness for agriculture, right? Which we know we move into the stage where we're going to be developing the full proposal, because we have gotten approval for that to go to the next level. So we are constantly working on that. And as I was reflecting on this, it came to me that we like to talk government, the government not doing this or the government, but really and truly, it's the public officers who have the responsibility to execute those things. It's not as we would think government in quotes the political directory. We, the technical officers, is who are the ones who prepare those documents, and we have to ensure that it's followed up. We continue lobbying for it, and it goes up to cabinet. We get cabinet approval, etc. But we are the ones who have to do what I would call the heavy lifting. And if we fail, it's not a government failure. It's because we fail to continue the process that we have initiated. So that's a work in progress, and you have a whole collaboration between the Department of Economic and Technical Cooperation and all the line ministries that has to play a part in that process to ensure that project goes all the way to approval. But also more important is the issue of implementation, and sometimes that's where we have some challenges. But we have to ensure that we implement according to the timelines we have set in the proposals.
All right. Well, I'm happy you've identified that, because clearly it means that being one of the drivers of the process, Mr. Thompson, that you're a right fit, right?
He's a heavy lifter. Byron.
For heavy lifting.
Yeah, okay.
All right.
Yeah, let me.
Mr. Campbell.
Morning, gentlemen. Morning, gentlemen. Trevor, let me put you on the forefront here. No, Trevor, Mr. Thompson, you're the Chief Agricultural Officer. In fact, let me expose you a little bit. Only last week, you were in the front line in Carriacou, on the ground, looking at the water situation in terms of wells and dams. So you've been involved in water resource and other environmental resource within the ministry, within the government, for many years, a long time. So you're a foot soldier, no doubt. I mean, here you attended this huge conference, and we've heard that this conference made a difference. Now it's about delivery and not promises. And you know, in that conference also there were disagreements or agreements over targets and negotiation texts, and trying to determine what's the difference between urges and requests. Having attended this conference and given your experience, are you convinced? How do you feel about, yes, there's finally going to be some changes, some action moving from promises to actual delivery?
Yes, I think this COP was I would say a watershed moment, because it included a lot of commitments, and I would say commitments with firm financial allocations made for the specific sector of water and agriculture and forestry. Right, so there were major declarations made with pledges of funding from the developed countries to contribute to those things. What is required is follow-up action. So normally what would transpire is that the documentation, etc., the request for us to make for funding would come to the ministries, etc., and we would have to action it, and it has to be timely. So we have to pay attention to that. I think the National Climate Change Committee pays attention to that, and would begin the process of lobbying that there's resources and allocations made for agriculture, for forestry, for water, etc. And there are opportunities there for the nation, for the country to access. I mean, there were major pledges made, and it may take a year or two to see the resources being released. But I believe that if we position ourselves, we stand to benefit significantly.
Trevor, on that note, I know that Grenada is already working with IFAD, approaching the Adaptation Fund, again, as Dr. Spencer pointed, for grant financing. I think the initial, what we're eligible for, is about $10 million US, and I know that work is already taking place there. But you know, we hear this. Someone said going forward requires hope. You know, but I mean, where's the hope going to come from? I know at the COP conference itself that the society, social society, or people were, particularly youths and others, were demonstrating, were trying to hear their voices heard, was taking action. What is the advice here in Grenada? What is the society, as the public, what are we expected to do, or behavior or action, if we are going to inform government, if we are going to influence government in terms of going forward? But I know that you said it's down to the technicians, it's down to other places. But what is the role of the public here?
Well, the public has a major role of advocacy, right? And I would add quickly with that. Besides advocacy, a lot of those resources are not going to come to government. They're going to be channeled through civil society, NGOs, CBOs, etc. So they have to educate themselves and open their eyes to the opportunities, and also build within their structures the capacity to access and implement projects that they should develop. One of the challenges our local NGOs and CBOs have is their internal capacity. They lack, even though the people with the skills to implement and execute projects, Another one is sometimes the governance structure doesn't permit them, to access those kind of resources. And then the issue of a lot of them are not structured where they can have full-time people on staff to implement those projects. And those are the main areas I see where they have to strengthen themselves and form themselves into really dynamic organizations to access those resources, because a lot of those resources are going to be channeled through NGOs, CBOs, community organizations, etc. And we have to build those capacities now and position ourselves to access those resources. Many of the Pacific countries, etc., are already doing that, and I think we have to see that being rapidly implemented in the Caribbean countries.
Dr. Spencer, you talked earlier about well, it's referred to as the Glasgow Climate Pact. That is that by the end of 2022, you expect that persons would revisit their pledges and to strengthen their pledges essentially by the end of 22. How practical is this? If they weren't able to do it in a setting, in the conference itself, how are they expected to do this at a later date? And also the follow-up question here is, what is the next step coming from COP26 for Grenada, for us? Is there a report? What can you say about this, Doctor?
Well, I mean, that's a fantastic question. When we look at what happened in the final hours of the meeting, because negotiations are taking place on the margin. There were two words: phase out of coal and phase down of coal. And there was particular countries that could not accept the word phase out, because they are saying our domestic circumstances does not allow us to agree to the phase out of coal at the moment. We are prepared to accept phase down, and that went on that almost crashed the crop. And sometimes we have these things happening in the crop all the time, because it's happening on the margins. The deliberations are happening on the margin. To a large extent, there have to be some level of skepticism, of course, in terms of implementation of why we have not done it before. But as we see, it's always an incremental activity. And once we stay in tune, informed by the science, I think that tends to, over time, change the narrative. And here's the reason why we have changed the narrative over the years on several aspects of the negotiations. The things that we have agreed in COP26 in Glasgow would have been impossible 4 or 5 years ago. But as we move on and on, and as we move the needle, we find out with civil society backing, of course, we find out that these things are possible. And then another area, if you look at very carefully, when we listen to all of the speeches by the heads of delegation, when you listen to the speeches very carefully, and you listen to and you see the outcome of the COP, again you see some measure of disconnect. Yeah. And it has to be with the geopolitics, and that is being played on the different stage. We have heard the G2, for instance, China and USA coming together on the issue relating, especially with the reduction of methane and other issues, and they make it a pact. Of course, we have the G7 and the G20 meeting. And all of these things have to be taken into consideration. It's not only COP26 outcome. We have to look at the outcomes in all of these areas, because it's not only about climate change. It's also about sustainable development. We have to link everything to poverty, to livelihoods. I mean, all of the 17 sustainable development goals. Climate change is just one of them. We have biodiversity. So we have to look at a bigger envelope on the national and global stage. So when we're talking about climate change, we cannot talk about climate change in a vacuum. It is climate change as part of the Sustainable Development Goals. And the commitment to climate change is critical, because, of course, climate change can affect each of the other development goals. So to a large extent, I will say the outcome of the COP, if I have to give it a grade, I will say maybe a 6 out of 10 in terms of moving the needle a little bit. But in terms of expectation, the number will be very low. Expectations, especially from civil society. What should we do to address the current problem that we face in climate change? We are woefully short of making that commitment to do that. Now that is the reality.
Dr.
So,
Thomas, you talk about the disconnect in the actions of the G7s and the G20s and even the G2s. And I'll just be blunt and refer to them as top emitting countries, really. And really and truly, the dependence for the whole succession of this thing really depends on those countries. So with them not stepping up and stepping away, really and truly, what is happening to countries like ours? What do you foresee?
Well, and hence the reason why we take a multi-sector approach to this thing. We need to look at it not only in climate dimension. Of course, we look at adaptation as key. We look at the issue of loss and damage. That is the reason why a lot of issues surrounding loss and damage. It couldn't move because they didn't want it at all. They didn't even want to hear the terminology loss and damage, because they look at it as liability and compensation for actions that they have taken, which are negatively impacting on small island developing states and other developing countries. So that's the reason why some of those things have not moved any further, because of the same situation as we say. So to a large extent, as I said, they are the major emitters. Of course, coal. One of the things that came out of the deliberations, though, is for the first time we see a universal acceptance that fossil fuel and the use of fossil fuel is a primary cause of climate change. That has come out very clearly. Another thing that came out of COP26 is the science. There were a lot of problems prior to COP26 on accepting and welcoming the science from IPCC, which categorically states the impact of climate change and the where climate change comes from, put it that way, and what things that we need to do to address it. The science was very, very clear. And for a long time, many countries could not even accept the science. Yeah. So now we have to ride on that trail right now. I think there is a very good opportunity right now, albeit that the commitment is not sufficient, but there is a momentum now to really push the envelope to get decisive action coming out of the G20 and G7 countries. So we really got to push hard. Of course, we had a situation with the administration in the USA having removed themselves earlier from the Paris Agreement and from climate action to a large extent. They're saying they are back on the table. We had a situation in Canada who was out of the table at some point in time. And they are all indicating now they're back on the table, so they need to put the money where the mouth is.
So, Doc, just to follow up on this thing with the science, because when you read the reports from the ITC and the fact that we're on this trajectory for 2.5, it's frightening, very frightening for us as humans and survival, and the biodiversity and all that's going to be impacted. And I hear you saying a positive thing was the fact that countries are now accepting that. I suspect the reason they are is because they're seeing more severe natural situations with fires and storms and so on that are creating significant disasters for them and the impact on their GDPs. So the question here is, as countries like ours, and I hear Trevor talking about the NGOs and that community and getting projects before the committees and yourselves and people involved in this process, how critical it is for us to PR, from our PR public relations, educate our persons of potential issues and damages. We had a situation in Sotes with sea level rise and erosion of beaches and all that. How significant is the PR going to be for us as these small islands to explain to our people who live on the coastline, have their livelihoods dependent on the coastline and what happens and so on? How significant is that going to be for us to sensitize our people, to let them understand what could be the potential effects and how we need to operate or change our operation to deal with these effects that are coming or here?
Yeah, I think that is a key question, and again, that goes to what Byron was asking. What will be some practical next steps as we go forward? I think first of all, information is very critical, and dissemination of information, public education and awareness on the issues of climate change. I mean, all issues, not only the impact, but how do we address it, and how do we cope and all the issues? How do we finance that implementation and coping? All of these things needs to be clearly articulated, and I think it has to be linked directly to the governance, and it has to link directly to livelihoods, to all of the sustainable development goals. I don't think we could talk climate change in a vacuum. I think it has to relate to how do I feel, what is in it on the community level, on the national level, on the individual level. I think all of these things have to be clearly articulated and shown to have an impact on your livelihood.
Yeah.
So it's important, I believe, that we need to have a very strong educational program, involvement, and hence the reason why we're talking about youth involvement, CYEN being involved in terms of on the regional level. Having all that kind of outreach, I think it is quite important. I want to make a point though that once, and maybe I want to indicate very clearly that being on the table is one thing, but you got to be prepared to be on the table. You have to have a very clear preparation. Going to these meetings and them is not going to should be seen as having a dry ride, because you have to have tremendous preparation. And while on the table, you have to articulate. You cannot sit and watch things go by. You have to be very, very powerful as small island states on the table. So we do multiple rounds of preparation on the level of Alliance of Small Island States, on the level of CARICOM, on the level of OECS, and on the national level with the National Climate Change Committee. All of these things we have to be well prepared. We have to use the science, and we have to be imbued with all of the ramifications. We have to look at all aspects of climate change and go to the table and really make the points. So it's hard work. It's very, very difficult and hard work, which we need to. And we need to use the science as a basis of that hard work. So in other words, I'm saying that we have to be well prepared, and then we have to disseminate the information from that preparation.
All right. Before we let you go, because this is such a broad and wide topic, this climate change and all the things that you gentlemen are getting into, so we would have to invite you again once you agree to it. But before, Mr. Thompson, as the Chief Agricultural Officer, and having had those interactions out at COP26, the policies though, how are you? Because just only on the weekend I saw that this getting to this why I asked about a life support question at the beginning is that getting to 1.5 and previously 2.5, they are saying that the planet is already more than 1 degree Celsius warmer, and it's already a threat. And we have the large emitters deciding whether, they still want to burn coal, they still want to use fossil fuel, or they still have to wait, yada, yada, yada. Meanwhile, it's impacting, the small island developing states like ours. The things that you have garnered there, and the things that have become policy here in Grenada as a result of, what are you doing with those? So, for instance, let's say an area like St. Andrews Southeast that is really vulnerable in many, many ways. We see the people who live close to the sea, the people who live from the sea, the sea level rises and all the threats that's coming from that. How is that going to influence the national policy? Localize it in that way for us.
Well, as part of the COP, we don't only spend time negotiating, we spend a lot of time doing presentations to very, very high level panels on what is happening in Grenada, what actions we are taking to ensure that we are addressing the issue of climate change, because we have to show that we're not just making requests and demands for greater resources. We have to show that we are utilizing the resources that is provided to do something. Right. So, for example, one of the things we have done is the preparation of the National Adaptation Plan. And reporting, we reported on that in this last COP, on what we accomplished, what were some of the things that we did, and is showing the results and the benefits. So a lot of the work you see going on with TNC and addressing the issues of reefs and rebuilding reefs and making sure the reefs stay alive, etc., are directly related to the National Adaptation Plan. The issue of the National Water Policy that is approved, and now we're moving. That was part of the whole project with NAWASA, where we have drafted new legislation. We're going to be setting up a national water resources management unit, etc. Those are all outputs from COP. The issue of the national land policy that cabinet approved only in November, right? It has a direct link to because embedded in the document now, in the language within those policies, is the issue of our response to climate change.
Right.
So those are some of the direct benefits you've seen coming out of that. And now we're going to review the NAP, right? Because the NAP has expired in 2021. So we're in the process now of preparing to review the NAP for 2022. And we are going to change a lot of the language there. So that in terms of the indicators and the
activities. Just to interject here, the NAP is the National Adaptation Plan. Okay,
climate change.
All right. So don't let it nap. Don't let it nap on us, right?
So the language within that document is going to change a lot to reflect what is happening with the science and how rapidly we need to accelerate our preparedness and our response and adaptation to climate change. We have the National Determined Contribution, the NDC, that we have only just reviewed, and which has set we have increased, in fact, Grenada's response and how we're going to mitigate the greenhouse gas reduction, and that is directly linked to forestry, to waste, etc. So, and Dr. Thomas could speak on that. I've just seen an email from him where he's requesting our response to certain things relating to that. So, a lot of the actions that we've seen happening in Grenada is directly linked to outputs from the COP, and making sure we position ourselves to benefit from the resources that will come to address those challenges we have.
As part of the adaptation and mitigation, how are we addressing overfishing and land use?
Well, as I said, we have a national land policy. We call it a national land management policy that's going to be addressing the issue of land use, what you do with land, how you manage that as a resource, so that it remains for present and future generation. It talks a lot. And we're going to be having a public relations side to this, where we're going to be informing the public. We have a policy. What does it say for you? Okay. What are the benefits are there for you? What is the relationship between you and land, and how you use that land? What it can be used for? What are the management responsibilities you as a landowner has, etc. The issue of fisheries is being addressed with the fisheries policy. We're going to be reviewing the whole issue of fishing and even the issue of using the engines that the small fishing boats use in thing is directly linked now to climate change. Yeah. That we have eradicated some of those engines that was producing too much greenhouse gases. Yeah. So a lot of the things you see happening has a direct link. And I will want Doc to speak, however, on the NDC that has just been reviewed, because that has significant policy changes for Grenada.
Okay. Well, we'll have to wrap on the NDC part. Dr. Thomas?
Yeah, well, of course.
And leave the rest for part 2.
Okay, well, I think for part 1, what I would like to say, I think a question that I've been asked early on is what next? And I think it's very important.
Yes.
I think what next has to do with what we are doing now. We need to do it right. We do have the GG Cruise project, for instance, is ongoing. I think if we do that project right, this is where we need to go. I sat in the meeting when they were evaluating in NAWASA. I'm very proud to hear the comments that were made in terms of NAWASA and its operations over the many years, and hence the reason why the project was approved, because they were speaking in glowing terms of the operations of NAWASA, and the intent. The project was set in a way that they felt that all of the climate rationale, all of the investment criteria of the GCF was met very strongly by that project. It was a perfect project. Now the project is ongoing. It took a little while, of course, to get the money. Now the money is ongoing. I think the proof is now how we implement this project. Implement it to the teeth, I think it will be the way to go. And all the other projects, these projects that Byron is doing, all of those, when we show the impact of those projects on the national and international level, this to me is the key. We also need to build the local capacity, build the capacity on the national level to handle these things. Yeah. It's not only about talking, it's about how do you manage the data? How do you look at all the information? How do you infuse the science? How do you report on these matters? How do you ensure that we obey all of the technical parameters and ramifications of these issues? And having the capacity to do so and to provide the evidence that we have done it in the proper way after the International Committee. I think once we do those things, we are opening the floodgate for resources for adaptation and other issues. So to me, it is very important. The national determined contribution that we have on the table now, it's about implementation. The National Adaptation Plan is about implementation and through the projects. Of course, we need to look at the energy sector because this was one of the key sectors in the nationally determined contribution. Energy and transport, electric vehicles, and all of these issues. Ensuring that we have the institutional framework, we have the policy framework right, and we have the implementation capacity. I think that will be the key for us moving forward. Thank you.
All right. So I guess part two, we look at the national determining contributors and the national adaptation contributors. We look at those and of course developing capacity and some bit of segue into the energy sector. So if we could have your agreement to come back for another time, maybe in a couple of weeks, gentlemen. I know your schedules are really busy, but of course you're the foremost experts on this matter. So it will be really useful to have you back. Mr. Thompson and Dr. Thomas?
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you means yes?
Of course.
I just wanted to reconfirm, that's all. Once again, thank you so very much to both of you for really bringing some, being so, eloquent on these climate change issues and just Grenada's representation. Yes, Dr. Thomas, you have been doing this for quite a long time. You and Mr. Thompson. Leon. Yeah. Ian Charles and all of you. And to PS Roxy McLeish as well. Those of you who've been doing this for quite a while. And to you as well, Mr. Thompson. We know you are the ones that have been in the trenches for years. And here we are at COP26. And this is where it probably makes most sense to Grenada, as the small island developing states are indeed under threat by the over emissions from big territories. But as Dr. Thomas said, we are in this together, and so we have to find our way out of it. So it'd be great to have you gentlemen back. Thank you so very much. Have a great day. Continue to stay safe and continue working for Grenada. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, have a good one. All right, so gentlemen, Mr. Campbell?
Yeah, wow, I get emotional once these climate issues come up, but
emotional.
I think, I mean, what I want to say is that I'm really impressed with Grenada's, first of all, representative at the meeting. I thought it was led by the Minister Steele, but as we see, we had excellent resource, excellent representation. And as Dr. Spencer said, makes a difference, and the preparation that he talked about, and maybe more should be going into our preparation. That's an important point he's making because resources need to be directed there in the preparation. And the other point there is that there are resources, meaning financing available. And again, part of the preparation would link us into this. And that's very important because, mind you, it is competitive and preparation and the quality of our documentation that's going forward would make a difference, data collection and all of that. But I remain very concerned, colleagues, that because I know we are now at 1.1 degree of warming and going beyond 2. I was just looking at some information there. I mean, you will have 99% of coral reefs bleaching. would have, I mean, what way that puts us. So it's sea level rising, you know. So this is really crucial. This is very important. But I'm also very concerned about our local action, you know, as individuals, our individual behavior. And I look forward to the next part 2, you know, to really look at some of the practical things and Grenada's preparation and Grenada's planning and Grenada's implementation of existing climate related projects.
Yeah.
I just think that the topic of climate change and its impact on small developing states like ours is urgent. I think we need more than a part 2. We might need a part 2 and a part 3 because this is so critical for us now and where we are in our development and what's happening. But the aspect that Dr. Thomas rose in the end about capacity and capacity building, here is an opportunity, I think, for our young people to get involved in that discussion of climate and what is happening, not only from an advocacy point of view, but from a point of view of getting involved in opportunities for work.
Right.
So Doc talk about data, you talk about you know what we do and how we manage the projects, how we implement and how we follow up. Trevor mentioned the issue of reporting and all of that. These are excellent areas for our young people to get involved in, job opportunity, career opportunities, climate, because trust me, we're now starting with this.
Yeah.
And if we continue on this trajectory, there are going to be quite a number of opportunities for us to see how we can develop our smart cities to deal with our hurricanes and all of that that will come with greater intensity. So there's so much opportunity here, I think, for our young people for us to get involved and get involved not only to advocate, but also as a career path to develop and help and build capacity. Fellas like Leon and Doc and Trevor, they've been doing this for 20 plus years. We need to get succession planning for technical people at that level so that, you know, it continues with the vigor that we have. And, you know, we really have to thank them for the work. But this is such an urgent topic that I think we just need to keep it on the radar and keep talking about it.
Indeed. Because I'm sure when they started to go to these conferences, it was just a conversation, but now it is actually related to how, you know, our survival. And so climate resiliency is becoming, if you will, an industry. and we have to ensure that we're building the capacity, we have the resources, and I think critical here, as you mentioned, Senator Diali, is a human resource aspect of it in terms of managing the resiliency through education, through reporting, you know, financing, all the implementation. You could only implement when people have the knowledge. And so I think it's incumbent upon all those involved to build the climate resiliency modality framework to make it work for Grenada. I think Grenada is ahead in so many ways. The reporting on NOASA at the COP26 to get those commendations. I mean, you mentioned it before, just how impressed they were. And again, we're hearing it repeated here, as well as Grenada was being the only island, and I think now Barbados has followed, and Dominica has followed as well. Grenada building in this contingency with their creditors for, you know, when we have issues with hurricanes, how, you know, how it's going to, you know, impact our ability to repay the debt because of our vulnerabilities. Right. You know, so we have been out front on many issues, and so it is incumbent upon the public to know what's happening and just how our behaviors, our lives need to change and reflect that. We need to move away living on the seashore lines and on all these different things, all these little actions. They will make a huge difference.
Brenda, just one point I want to make here, and I just want to congratulate our representatives. Again, Dr. Spencer pointed out, this is not entertainment. This is hard work, these conferences. It's very far. There's health issues that are related, and they work very hard. I've seen this. I've seen Dr. Spencer and others work in Samoa, in small island, UN small island developing states, and it's 24 hours around the clock. This is a lot of work. We really want to thank these representatives for excellent representation. Their presence make a difference for us.
Yes, it really does. And I think Grenada has a big voice, a small island, but a big voice on climate change issues. We clearly see that based on the representation we have and the inclusion we get in terms of global issues. So let us continue to pursue that. And we'll have the gentleman back to go through quite a bit of it. So thank you so much. Anything else? There was lots of things happening last week. Senator Dialli, what were you up to last week?
Picking peas.
Hey, Shatariki, I was song now. I want to pick your peas.
So, no, I think there's a lot going on as well on the national front, and we see a lot of things happening on the politics side as well. And I know we're going to get more involved there in terms of conversations on that and what is happening. And in Barbados recently, the projections for Prime Minister Motley to go back in as the incumbent.
Yeah.
So there's a lot happening, but regionally and locally. But I know
Barbados' election is on Wednesday.
That's right.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to see what's going to happen in terms, as I say, the modality for campaigning as that evolves over the next few months and so on, both here locally and of course.
Yeah, Barbados, it was nice and intimate. It was really nice and intimate.
Good. See how we're going. I mean, we still have COVID and Omicron and what's happening with that, and our positivity rates fluctuating, and the number of people it's affecting business in terms of productivity.
Yes.
A lot of our staff are out with being either positive or in contact with a positive person, and how that is affecting us now in the business society. So it is going to be a challenge for us as we move forward in the next few months, and we really beg that Grenadians adapt and change behavior patterns and follow the protocols and get vaccinated where they can, those who want to, and so that we could keep our levels up, because I don't think we as a country could shut down anymore in any form.
No.
So it's about living with this virus and getting to understand how your behaviors need to adjust to deal with that. So, that said, I mean, let's see what happens, as we move forward.
As you mentioned, living with the virus, though, I think sometimes we get really caught up in a lot of foolishness. I'll be quite honest about that. So there's this big thing. I was driving and I'm hearing this person on air getting really antsy about, just how offensive this thing about living with the virus is. And, they're not paying attention to people's family who has passed. And I said, we have to learn to live with the virus. How is that offending someone? And then after, what came after was a sort of political spiel. So then I realized where they were coming from. It looked as if when we put on our rose-colored glasses, we seem to get very, very finicky and very, very stupid. When somebody say we have to learn to live with a virus, they're not negating anybody who has lost anybody. The authorities are not offending anybody. It means that we have to coexist with COVID. That's all. Well, that's all it means.
And many others. And many others. Not just COVID alone.
Yes, and many others, exactly. And many things. And we have to coexist with you too, who have that sort of warped view of what living with, we have to learn to live with it means, Yeah, we have to learn to live with many things.
Colleagues,
we have strange people on air these days.
As I said earlier on, I'm in self-isolation because I came in contact with infected individual. Hopefully tomorrow I'm back in the streets. But last week I spent a few days in Carriacou, and with Trevor, in fact, we were there with engineers and other persons, technical staff, looking at the water situation there, looking at the wells and dams and possibly rehabilitation. With financing from the Caribbean Development Bank. So it was, but looking at Carriacou, such a beautiful place, a beautiful island, a lot's happening there. Maybe on another occasion I'll talk about it, but that was the highlight of my week last week. On COVID, Brenda, I agree with what you said, both yourself and Chris on this matter. We have to learn to live with it, coexist, as it were. And that would call for innovation and creativity, but the bottom line is get vaccinated, key and follow the protocols for now. Because I agree, whereas I was an advocate previously for lockdown and restriction and movements, I think we've gone beyond this for now, and we have to find a correct path to go forward.
Yes, indeed, we do. Thank you so very much, Mr. Campbell, and thank you for zooming in from Mount Morris this morning. Continue to stay safe.
Thanks.
And we look forward to looking you in the eye in person again next week.
I look forward to that too.
Sending that energy.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you so very much. Tomorrow, Senator Dialli, is a state funeral for the late Carlisle Glean.
That's right.
And that's going to be happening out in his
beautiful
grove.
His body is in Parliament building.
It lays in Parliament
Yeah.
today, so
Today,
Grenadians,
so-
you can pay your last respects to former Governor General Sir Carlisle Glean. He will lay in state at Parliament building during just about 9 o'clock this morning
Yeah.
till about 4 o'clock, so you can go out and sign the condolence book. So please do that. His state funeral will be tomorrow, and it will be aired across all national platforms. Yep. So that's our program. Have a great week, Senator Dialli.
Thank you.
All right.
I
Be
intend
good.
to. I intend to.
Don't create any drama this week.
I'm not in Parliament, so. I won't
You're not in
take
Parliament
any-
this week. You might just say something in the news or something. You know how you're restless, Senator Dialli. All right, and you
I
keep your
restless
eye.
with the development of our country and our
Yes,
people.
we
Yes, I
should
am.
all be. We should
I am.
all be restless in a good way. Restless in a good way. Restless in a very good way. All right, we should all be. That's our program, everyone. Go out and have a really
Yes.
good week. Those of you who can, please do so. Remember, there are those among us who can't do that, and then let's remember them as well. All right, and getting ready to celebrate our nation's independence. Of course, let's bring the Grenadian spirit into all that we're going to do for 2022. Yeah, don't wobble too much in COVID. We have to just let it become a side thing. All right, as we move forth. All right, let's try to focus our energies on moving forward. That's our program. Thanks to all the broadcast entities who brought us MTV on air and online. Thank you so very much for that. Mikey Live, TNR Communications, Party Grenada, Sister Isle, out there in Carriacou. Those of you in Carriacou, Pity Martinique, good morning to you. Special good morning to you. Of course, those of you who are on KG9, we thank you as well on our own Perspectives page. For Senator Christopher Dialli and Mr. Byron Campbell, our executive producer Richie Oliver, our camera person Kirk Oliver, Nazim Benjamin, who provided professional streaming services, and our director Blondell George, I am Brenda Batiste. Until next time, for another Perspectives. Bye-bye.
Bye.